Hi, I'm Laufey, and you're listening to In Time.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of In Time Podcast. If this is your first time checking us out, I hope you like the new setup. It's pretty new for us and we're getting used to all this new equipment. We are back with a brand new episode today, and I hope you've checked out our recent ones. We've had Parthenope, Moonchild, Kurt Rosenwinkel and Connor Albert, and we have Maya Delilah coming soon. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Mia.
Yeah, I mean, today we're adding another amazing name to that list. We're recording with an amazing up-and-coming contemporary jazz artist with a voice like no other, and it's amazing. But Laufey Lin is an Icelandic-Chinese singer, songwriter, and a multi-instrumentalist who's been popping off lately. She released a debut album or EP on all platforms back in April of this year, 2021, and everyone's loved seeing the growth from song to song. Thanks for coming, Laufey. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing very well. How are you?
Yeah, we're quite excited. I mean, courtesy of Mushroom Studios in Birmingham, we've got this nice little remote setup going, and everything's working, which is a big relief. We came like an hour early, thinking, oh man, prepare for the worst. But you know what?
We haven't done too badly,
No,
yeah.
it's working out. I think the sound's coming out all right, and the lighting, I'm more than impressed by it.
It does sound so much better when you talk into it.
It does, though. Yeah, let me bring this a little bit more this way. But yeah, no, I mean, let's talk about how you got into music. I've seen on your socials as well, you've had pictures where you're playing violin from a really young age and everything, but I'm guessing there's some sort of family influence there.
Yeah, my mother's a violinist, and her parents or my grandparents were also professors of violin and piano at the Central Conservatory of Music in
Nice.
Beijing. So I grew up in a very like a classical music household. It was kind of I didn't really have a choice. I started playing. I had like a little violin that I'd play around on when I was like a toddler, but I started taking piano lessons when I was like 4 and cello when I was around 8. And it was just like, it was almost like school. Like I didn't think much of it. It was just like an hour or two extra every day after I finished school. It was just
Yeah.
like an extra class. Um, but of course, I really loved it, and there was always music playing in the house. And I grew up going to symphony performances because my mom was in the Iceland Symphony. So I kind of grew up very much in that world and with a deep appreciation for classical music. Um, so yeah, that was my early musical roots, and I kind of started. I didn't start doing anything other than classical until I was like a teenager, where I kind of started turning to jazz a bit.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever see anything outside of music, or was it always you always knew you were going to go down that route as well?
I think I always knew, like, kind of deep inside of me that I was gonna go the music route. I grew up a very safe person. I've always been very obsessed with like safety and didn't dare to take too many challenges. And so I think I was for a while very scared of jumping into music as a career because it just seemed so scary and so unlikely that I'd ever be able to do something so wonderful as like my career. I'm happy I took the jump though.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
it's working out.
Yeah, I mean, we're both musicians as well, and the last 18 months or so has been really tough for everyone. But I guess,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you weren't a teenager until you found jazz. How did that come about? I read somewhere that it was a Billie Holiday album, right?
Yeah, it was so my father, he is not a musician actually, but he just like has an appreciation for like jazz, and he had a lot of old jazz records, like Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and some bossa nova as well, and would play that a lot. A lot of like Bill Evans and Oscar Peterson, Errol Garner, like jazz pianists as well. And I just really loved listening to them. It kind of felt like this comfortable middle ground between classical and like popular music. And I love pop music, but I didn't really see myself. I didn't resonate with the singers of the time. Like the voices were a lot more high pitched, and there was a lot more production that I kind of like didn't understand at the time. And like Ella Fitzgerald with these like songs that were taken from musicals with these like grand orchestra arrangements, it seemed much more familiar to me. And I think from there I kind of just like started to love all these standards and the stories that they were telling, and kind of started singing myself as well. And I felt like, like Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday, Peggy Lee, like the women of that time, their voices were a lot. I just like, they were a lot more like a cello somehow. And of course, playing the cello, I felt like there was a connect there. And I felt like my voice was also like a little bit darker, a little bit lower, also a little bit more like a cello. So I could kind of resonate with them more and just really fall in love with that style.
That sounds a lot like what Amber
About to say
from
that.
Moonchild said. Yeah, she said something very similar about, like, we were talking about her voice as well, where she'd said, she plays like she sings, or she sings like she plays, and it's actually resonates very much with what you were saying as well, with, like, you sort of sound similar to your cello when you're playing and singing as well. Something you mentioned was, you were saying, like, pop music at the time. So do you think your opinions shifted with the, like, the sort of pop music you're listening to now, or if you do?
No, not really. I mean, I love pop music. I actually really love pop music, and I wish I could sing it well. But I just feel it's kind of just like almost like a different craft for me. It's like, um, although I'd love to try out something, and I do like write with pop writers and collaborate with them, and even the people I'm opening up for on tour are a lot more pop leaning,
Yeah.
which I think is really lovely, because that's kind of my goal, is kind of to take down these like walls between genres. I don't know if that's contradictory to what I was saying earlier,
No,
but
no.
I kind of see it all as like good music,
Yeah. So how?
And I think,
Go on. Sorry.
sorry, I'm off my phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you
Sorry.
find your like you said you've written with pop artists? How do you find your style is really unique? How do you find it blends with pop writers? And is it a similar writing kind of process? Or do you find, like, when you write with these people that it kind of gets a new sound out of them? They create this new vibe of a song, or is it what? How do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. My songwriting is obviously very inspired by like the Great American Songbook and jazz standards. And it's been really fun to work with writers who, are like primarily like, write more like pop, but everyone, selfishly, I feel like everyone has an appreciation for these standards. Maybe this is just in my head, but and I've found that, people like these writers like writing in like trying out that different style, and I push them kind of in that direction, and then in turn they kind of teach me more about their kind of writing style and whatnot, and that really informs me and helps me, because I really want to be, I want to write all kinds of music, not only like jazz music. And I think songwriting in the end, it's just telling a good story and finding an interesting way, melodically, harmonically, and lyrically, to tell it. And I think that isn't, the genre doesn't change that.
Yeah, we spoke to a lot of people about something similar to what you just said. Melodically, harmonically, how something comes together. Is that in your mind when composing? Because I mean, it's different from guest to guest. Some people say that theory is a big factor in composing, but others say it's always ear first. How does it come about for you?
Definitely ear,
Yeah.
which is funny, because I've studied all the theory. Like I did like heavy classical theory and then a lot of jazz theory, especially at Berkeley. But I don't really apply it in my writing. I'm like aware of it. Like if you would ask me like to analyze a song, and like, you know, do like a chordal analysis and whatever. And I could do it. I wouldn't enjoy it, but I could do it. But otherwise I don't think about it at all. It's all through just ear kind of like, and I think that's kind of like, personally, I think that's the best way to write. You just like, and learn, you know, a new style and learn from your favorites. I think just listening is so important. And especially on like, because writing is like improvising, right? So you're kind of, you need to kind of like hear it in the back of your head whilst doing it. And I think, I definitely hear.
Yeah, no, I can't fault you. I think that's literally just tapping into your creativity in the best way and the smoothest way as well. Something, you mentioned as well, so Berkeley, and then I think right now you're in LA, right? So you've had the opportunity to like live in a few different spots around the world as well. I think you were in London for a bit as well, I believe.
Yeah, I feel like I've been living everywhere in the past even 2 years.
What's that timeline look like? Because you're from Reykjavik, right?
Yeah. Okay. Get ready. No, I'm kidding. So I grew up partially in Washington, D.C., but mostly in Iceland. I grew up, so I was in Iceland until I was like 19, and I went to Berkeley. And I was at Berkeley only for like 1.5 years until the pandemic hit. So I did the majority of my degree online, which is funny and bizarre, but actually worked out perfectly for me, because a month after lockdown started, I released my first song, and that kind of got the wheels rolling a bit. And it started, like, my artist project kind of started consuming more of my time, and I kind of needed to be able to travel and whatnot. So it actually worked out pretty well. And I also had a lot more time just at home to write and record videos for social media and just connecting with fans. So it was actually kind of a good thing for me. But I summer 2020, I decided that I didn't want to be in America anymore, because, well, it was tumultuous times politically, and also just the pandemic was still in an uproar, and I was looking at Iceland, my little hometown oasis island that had cleared out COVID for the summer, and my friends were like, you know, living fairly normal lives, and I thought, well, I'm going back. So I spent the summer in Iceland. I was there for like 2-3 months, and then I have a twin sister, and she goes to uni in Scotland. She goes to St. Andrews, so she was kind of going to Scotland, and then she had some work to do in London. And I thought, okay, wonderful. All of my musical idols live in London. And this like kind of like new emerging jazz scene is very much, I feel like, based out of London. So I thought, well, you know, I'm just going to go with you. And I had some meetings to take. So we stayed there for 2 months. And I actually wanted to just stay there for like the rest of the year and stay there, because I really made a lot of really good friends and connections, and really just love London.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's so beautiful.
Oh, I love it so much. I'm so excited to go back soon, and I could really see myself living there in the future. I mean, my mom, she studied at Guildhall when she was younger, so she's implanted in me like a very romanticized view of like a young London, which is beautiful, and I definitely plug into my music and lyrics. But yeah, I was there until my manager came along, and he was based in the States, and I liked him so much that I was like, okay, I gotta go back to America. And so I was, you know, there in DC for a couple months, and then the start of this year, I decided that I wanted to move to New York. So I was there in New York for 2 months. So I've really been like all over, I feel like. And now I'm in LA.
Yeah, I mean, you timed the move to New York quite well. I think things started popping off a bit, didn't it, in DC earlier this year? Was that when they like locked the whole city down?
Oh my god, yeah, I was actually there for that.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, I was just a couple of minutes away from the Capitol
Oh
when the
shit.
insurrection was happening, and there was a curfew, and like everything was
Wow.
boarded up, and it was very surreal,
Yeah.
but strangely, it's interesting to live through such historical times.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, I guess like with New York then, so you went from like New York to LA. Was there anything in particular like with New York? Were you not too keen on it? Were you not sold on the idea of there being there?
No, I love New York, and I feel like, you know, it's a bit more European, which I love and am more familiar with. Um, I could definitely see myself being there in the future, but there's no question that all the musicians are kind of like out in LA right
Yeah.
now. So I've been just working a lot more here in sessions and co-writing and doing working with producers and just being friends with other young artists. It's feels like the right move for me right now. But we'll see where life takes me. Apparently, I can't stay put. So
I mean, for sure. Well, we've spoke to a lot of musicians from LA. It seems to be that like the running theme is London or LA, isn't it, for musicians? Like we spoke to we spoke to Domi, another person who went to Berkeley. So talk to us a bit about Berkeley. You said you were only there for a year and a half. How was that experience? Because we've had mixed reviews from different people that have been there, but most of them are really positive.
Really, yeah. I think I'm very thankful for Berkeley because I think I really would not be where I am now without them. They, you know, gave me the opportunity to get to the States in the first place because I was just studying in Iceland, and they gave me a very, very generous scholarship that allowed me to actually study in the States. So it was really like truly something I couldn't turn down at that point. And yeah, it was the best place for me because I was like a little bit of a lost like classical musician when I entered. Like I was a cello principal, so it was like, but I knew I like loved singing and I loved jazz, and I wanted to learn about the music industry as well. So of all the music schools, like Berkeley was definitely the best option to do all of those things. So like I had a classical cello professor, I had more like a contemporary cello professor, and then alongside that I was taking songwriting classes and singing in showcases and meeting other musicians and also learning about the industry. My degree is actually in music business, which is very funny.
Yeah.
But Berkeley's kind of just like a musical playground. Like it almost, at least for me, like I didn't really care too much about what my major was because in the end I was just taking the classes that I wanted to take and meeting the people that I wanted to meet. So it worked out. It worked out well for me, and I think Boston is a wonderful, wonderful city to be a student in. It's kind of like calmer than New York, and there are a lot of other students from other universities there. So I think it gives you like a realistic experience just as a person, you know, which for me informed my songwriting a lot, you know. I love LA, but it really does feel like you're in a movie 24/7.
What, just LA?
I don't know how many times I've just like this isn't real life. But in a good way. Like I'm so happy about it. But Boston definitely kind of like, it was my first time away from home, first time away from my identical twin sister, who was just like, I felt like I was being ripped, like half of me was being ripped away. And you know, I started experiencing just life as a young person for the first time, and I think that's kind of what turned me into a songwriter, because I didn't start writing until I got thrown around a little bit, you know.
Yeah. I mean, one of the people that we've seen you collaborate with quite a few times on social media. I don't know if you met her at Berkeley or just met on social media, but Lizzie McAlpine.
Right.
We're both big fans of her work as well. So how did that kind of how did you guys meet? Was it at Berkeley?
It was at Berkeley. I mean, I remember we had a class together first year.
Oh wow.
And that was it was like a really random class, and we didn't talk to each other. I was like, I remember thinking she was so cool and so like talented that it was like intimidating. I was like very like fresh faced, like didn't dare to talk to anyone in that class, especially not Lizzie. But it wasn't. So I remember right before lockdown, I went to one of her shows, and I remember she had already started doing like some cool stuff, and I love her music. I was such a big fan. I remember I went to her apartment afterwards, and she like gave me a hug, and she was like, "We should like collaborate sometime." And I remember I was like, "Collaborate with me." And sorry, my manager is calling. And but then the pandemic happened, and I never, like, we all had to leave campus, and I remember I was like quite upset about it. But then like things kind of started rolling a bit for me, and I was very overwhelmed in the beginning because I remember I was thinking like, oh my god, there's so many people watching me now, and like I just want to do my best. But it was a very because it came pretty quick in the beginning, and I just remember I didn't want to make a wrong move, and it was kind of this situation where like, you know, like industry people were reaching out, and I didn't really, I was so like wary of like the dangers of that, and like I don't know, so I was just very overwhelmed, and I reached out to Lizzie, and I was like, help. And I remember I had a few FaceTimes with her, and she was just like, it felt very good to talk to someone who had been through it. And then, so it wasn't until we were in London that we got close, because I was in London and she was in London. And I remember, I think I reached out to her and said, you know, like, let's hang out. Like, I don't really have any friends here yet. And she was like, great, I don't either. And yeah, and we kind of like, I've always just ended up in the same city after that. And she came to hang out in New York, and yeah, I'm just she's one of my closest friends, and we talk almost every day. And she was in LA this summer as well, so we got a few moments to hang out as well.
That's cool, like just meeting up in different cities and different countries as well. It's like,
yeah, and I think that's just, I'm starting to realize that's just the nature of being a musician. You kind of, your friends are going to be sprawled all over, and then they're just, you know, you just meet along the way.
yeah, and it becomes less and less of a big deal. I guess it's just like, oh yeah, I saw you in like a completely other country, like, you know, just by chance as well. Like, oh right, no big deal anymore. I guess with that then as well, like, actually,
Turn that up for me, please.
yeah, just roll it up. Is that okay? Yeah, that's cool.
Sorry.
No, I think something as well. This is me just like being intrigued by it, like having yourself having a twin sister as well. You must have like abused a few tricks with that. I don't know, like switching classes in here and there, trying to get her into Berkeley.
Oh, there was one moment where I was like kind of feeling bad at Berkeley, and my sister was living it up in like St. Andrews. And I remember thinking like, you know, we could really switch right now. And provided you don't, because she's a really good violinist, but
Right.
she does not play the cello.
Yeah.
So I was like, as long as you don't do a cello class, you know, we could just switch right now and no one would notice.
Yeah.
We did switch one time in middle school, but it wasn't very amusing because nobody noticed. And my class that I didn't take, my sister took for me, had a pop quiz. So she actually just had to take a test for me, which was
yeah, it wasn't too exciting.
No, it was very bad timing on our part.
I mean,
it was like I said, we were like quite like goody two shoes, so it wasn't like, you know, we felt really bad doing it.
Yeah, what did you like do? Like, while she was doing a test on your behalf, what were you doing on her behalf?
Oh, we watched like a show.
It's even better.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
No, that's. I guess. No, I think like just that whole dynamic must be like really interesting in general. So she didn't go down like the songwriting route then. So does she still play violin and everything?
Yeah, she still plays violin, and she practices a lot more than I do, even though I'm a musician by trade now. But she's studying international relations and economics or whatnot, and she's gonna change the world. But
Oh, that's amazing.
I still am going to eventually drag her into the music industry. I really want to bring her a bit on tour at least, and to play with me a little bit and be in my recordings at least.
Yeah, I mean that must be incredible. My I can relate to that a bit because my dad is a guitarist and I'm a guitarist as well. And I remember when he took me to his first gig, and I was just learning how to play guitar when I was about 12, 13. He got me up on stage. And it's a really nice dynamic playing music with family. It's beautiful.
It really is. Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk a bit about your actual music then. So you said your first song came out, and then the wheel kind of started turning for you. It kind of happened. Happened really quickly. So talk to us a bit about how that felt for you, and the process of writing the music, and then the sudden growth in popularity, and the Instagram followers, the Spotify, everything.
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Really, really can't believe it. Like I'm still processing it, I think, but no, I released my first song in April 2020, and it was it's Street by Street. It was like the first song that I wrote that I really liked. Like, it was one of the very first songs that I wrote at all, and it was about Boston. I was like, some guy like kind of like was making me upset, and it was just ruining all of Boston for me. So I like wrote down the lyrics to this song, and then I added a tune to it, and I just really liked it. And then I found a producer at Berkeley, just literally like across my dorm, like because I knew like I had heard his music and I loved it. So I thought, like, let's do something. And this was like really like right before the pandemic. And then once we heard that was happening and they were kicking us off campus, I remember I told them, I was like, if we don't record this like today, I'm never recording this song. Because I'd never been in a studio before. I'd never recorded. Like, there was no way I was going to do it for the first time, like virtually, and have like I just knew I had to record it. So we literally recorded it the last day before we went off campus. And I remember my mother came up to, pack up my stuff and help me move out. And I made my mother and my sister, and I made them pack up my entire dorm because I was recording this song. And we finished it in a day. And I remember just thinking like, yeah, I really love this. And so that was the first song. I just released it myself through DistroKid. And at the same time, I had kind of started posting some videos on Instagram, and it started getting the attention of some like jazz like Instagram pages or whatever. And my following kind of started to grow a bit. And then it kind of snowballed. And I just started making friends with other musicians on the internet, and kind of started posting more and there and on TikTok as well. And a lot of like jazz standards and my original songs that are pretty jazzy, I guess. And I don't know, I kind of set out on this mission to just like introduce like my favorite music to as many people as possible. And I was lucky. I caught a wave where everyone was just like had nothing better to do than scroll on their phone.
Yeah, of course.
Listen to music,
Definitely.
But yeah, and then I was traveling a bit in Europe and figuring out like my team, and I finished up my EP actually in Boston. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, go on, sorry.
Yeah, I think one of the people that I was quite excited to see when you'd met them was Adam Melka. Yeah, so I don't know when. I think that was a few months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was just a couple of days ago, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How did that happen? And how did you kind of how do you guys meet? And then like.
I have a great story for that. So, I mean, first of all, I can't believe it, because I've been like the biggest Adam Melcher fan for ages. And one of his songs, Buzzer Beater, was my most played song of 2020. It was like,
yeah.
it was all I listened to. And before I started releasing music on my own, I was just so obsessed with this music. And I remember, I remember he like followed me or something last fall, and I like lost my mind. I was like, I cannot believe this. And then once I got to LA, like we had a couple of sessions scheduled, sorry. And so and it was so crazy to be sitting in front of it. I was fangirling so hard. It really thinks I'm crazy, but yeah, we wrote a bit together and just talked about music, and it was a very surreal moment for me to do that, to get to sit in the room with somebody who I just never in my wildest dreams would think that I would get to work with.
Yeah.
With a person that I just used to obsess over. It's been happening a couple of times now, and every single time I can't believe it.
I mean, that's really interesting. I guess it's a bit similar for us, if I'm honest with you, because you mentioned just that, like, you know, you released your first song when you started growing when everyone had to just sit all day and scroll through their phones. You know, that's all we could do. We did the same. We tried to capitalize on that. You know, and you know, musicians couldn't tour. Musicians were, you know, in the same boat as everyone. They had to be at home. So we just thought, you know, let's message them. Let's start a podcast, and that's how we started. And it's been the same for us. You know, 12 months later, you know, we're talking to you. It's surreal for us, and we've met some really great people through it. So yeah, it's been a really good experience, hasn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
But you know, I just related to everything you said then, because this, you know, despite the fact that this pandemic has been just a crazy time for everyone, it has had its positives, and you know, now that everything's slowly getting better, we can reflect on those and, you know, look back at it and try and draw the tiny bit of good from it that we can.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I hate to admit that I capitalized off of this like ground you know, disaster.
Exactly, yeah.
But I definitely did.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had to, didn't we? You know, you had to. It was that, or do nothing for nearly 2 years. But anyway, let's talk a bit about stuff that's going on now. You've got some tours coming up, haven't you? Do you want to talk to us a bit about those?
Yeah. So I, again, have not experienced being like a recording musician to this capacity, at least outside of a pandemic. So I haven't played I played one live show with like my own music and whatnot. But I'm playing London Jazz Festival in November, which I'm so excited about.
We'll be there.
That's like, oh really?
Yeah, it should be. Yeah.
It's so exciting. I can't believe it. And it's in this beautiful, it's in the Purcell Room, which is just so meaningful to me, and in the South Bank Center, and which is also where the Philharmonia is based. So I love them. But I just, I mean, I think I'll always have like a very special place in my heart for London. And also because it's a jazz festival, it's like, I'm just so excited for that. I'm going to have like a little bit more of a jazz leaning set, which is just so nice. And then after that, like literally the next day, I'm flying to the States and I'm opening up for Alexander 23 on tour for a few East Coast dates. And then I open up for Ricky Montgomery on tour for the rest of the States. And then I have my own shows in New York and LA, which I'm very excited about too. It's very surreal to be able to get to sing my songs for people in person.
I think with your songs as well, and like, you know, you were saying you've been starting you only, not recently, but you know, you started songwriting when you kind of moved out of Iceland and sort of when you came to Berkeley, really. What was it? How do you find it? You know, when you were like you sort of must have set yourself a challenge at some point. I'm gonna write an EP, which ended up becoming Typical of Me, which came out early this year, of course. How did you find it, like kind of writing a set of songs now that's like, okay, this has to kind of like glue together to make a project now?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't too focused when I wrote my first song to like do an EP. I was kind of like, you know, praying to God that I'd be able to cough up another song
Yeah.
that I liked. Which thankfully I did. But I wrote most of it like during the pandemic, most of the EP, like in the early stages, like the songs that I wrote. I developed so much as a songwriter just even in the past, 1.5, 2 years. And yeah, sorry, I'm not answering this question very well, but
No, it's cool.
That's fine.
but the EP kind of came together. I had like a couple of songs that I knew that I had like posted like little snippets of online and had, done well on TikTok or Instagram, and people were like asking me about it every day. That's kind of like, one really good gauge for me of which songs I was going to put on the EP.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of, how it came together. And I knew I wanted to have one, reworked standard in there.
Yeah.
Which turned out to be "I Wish You Love," which is and also with like a lot of cello, because I kind of like do like sometimes like videos where I'm like plucking cello and singing jazz standards. So I wanted to have one song like that, kind of as like an homage to like my Instagram project, if you will.
Yeah, no, I mean, and then I think what after the Typical of Me EP came out, you sort of went on to release another single, which was a really cool single, "Let You Break My Heart Again," which was with the Philharmonia Orchestra. Nah, that was super cool. Yeah.
I still can't believe I got to. Sorry, this is turning into me just like being in disbelief the entire time.
No, that's
Go
cool.
for it, yeah.
That's genuinely how I feel. But so the artistic director of the Philharmonia reached out and said that he was a fan and wanted to do something together. And I remember thinking like, ooh, like this is first of all insane, because I love the Philharmonia Orchestra and grew up, like listening to orchestras, obviously, and never in my wildest dreams, although it was at the top of my bucket list, would I think that I'd get to work with a symphony, especially one as good as the Philharmonia. So I was very, very surprised. But and then when I found out that they wanted to do a song together, I was like losing my mind. I could show you right now. It's been at the top of my bucket. I could win a Grammy tomorrow, and playing or recording with a symphony is still going to be like the highlight of my life, because I think just growing up in classical music, like playing with symphonies is just that's the dream. It's like it feeds so much into my goal of just introducing classical and also jazz music to like a new audience, and making it something that's like I said, just good music in the end, like not something that's scary to approach or super gate kept, because they have been. And I just want to introduce it as something fun and normal. But yeah, so they said they wanted to do a song together, and I was like, okay, I know just the song. I'd written this song like at like 3 a.m. in January, like peak lockdown. Everything kind of was like going wrong, but like around the world. And I was just upset. And I was, there was this guy that I like, didn't really know what we were, but I really liked him. And I was like, it's funny. I kind of like don't care almost how he treats me or what he does, because I just like him so much. I just let him break my heart again and again and again. So I just wrote that song, and I always thought like, oh, it would sound really good with strings. So when they came along, I was like, well, it could be strings or it could be an entire symphony orchestra. So and then we had an arranger help. Ian Farrington did an amazing job. It was perfect, absolutely perfect. And I wrote some cello lines, and yeah, they recorded it in London, and then I recorded the guitar and the voice and the cello in Washington D.C. actually, and then it was mixed, and now it's my favorite song that I've ever released.
Yeah, I mean,
it's amazing.
It's incredible. Yeah, I mean, you said Daniel, that you wrote some cello lines. Did you have much involvement with the actual arrangement, or is it just the Philharmonia Orchestra?
Not a little bit. So I had, a couple of Zooms with the arranger, and there were a couple of notes that I really wanted to appear. Like there's this one note after just in the chorus, and it's almost like this climactic kind of like right after. Okay, I'm really bad at explaining it, but it was some tension that I just like, it had to be there. Yeah. And every time I hear it now, and of course it was put in, every time I hear it now, I feel like I'm floating. Like I'm just like, I like cried the first time I heard it.
Oh wow, that's incredible. What an experience. So like in terms of playing that song live, how are you gonna kind of, how are you gonna do that?
That is a wonderful question. Obviously, I'll just have to get the Philharmonia Orchestra on stage.
Just for that one song.
Well, we'll look forward to that. That would be, I mean, I'm sure that's another bucket list, playing the song live with them.
A live performance, I definitely, I mean, that would be the real stuff. Yeah. My goal is just to be able to do like a night at the symphony, like an evening at the symphony type of thing, like in the future. Like, how Ella Fitzgerald did and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's really a dream. But I don't know. Let's see if I can claw my sister into it on violin.
That would be sick. That would be really cool.
Yeah. Let's see if we can bully her into it.
No, I'm sure she'll be down as well. I mean, you can't say no to that. I think something I was intrigued to find out. I mean, we'll find out anyways at the Jazz Festival in November, but maybe it will be slightly different when it comes to playing with Alexander-23 and Ricky Montgomery. What sort of arrangement are you going for? What setup? Are you going to have like a full band? Is it just yourself and a guitar?
Just me and a guitar. Me and my Gibson, my red Gibson guitar. It's just gonna be me with a guitar.
Yeah.
And a spotlight.
Nice. And then.
And piano, it's available because I love that.
Yeah, and then I think I don't know Alexander-23 well enough. Does he play is that like an arena tour, or is that just like a regular sort of big-ish venue?
Yeah, it's not an arena tour, I think, but
he'd be like, oh shit.
No. Yeah. I'm playing a lot of venues that I have like, really loved and gone to see shows at, so it's really surreal to be playing those shows myself, and it's going to be really cool to get to connect with Alexander and Ricky's audiences, which are definitely a bit different than mine, which is really exciting to me.
Definitely, I think it's definitely all about like bridging that gap as well. They can. It's not like a very, it's not like it's not a closed door thing. Anyone can listen to jazz. Anyone can sort of appreciate that style of music, and I'm sure like there's like gateway artists, isn't it, almost? And maybe you end up like sort of helping people learn more about it that way as well, which would be really cool, I guess.
That's my goal.
And I think that's really cool to have as well, because there's a lot of people, it's like, oh, you listen to jazz and you have to like, So What by Miles Davis or something like that. Like, well, there's so many different types of it as well. And we were actually talking about it with, I think, Parthenope. Was it Parthenope or Connor? So, when like with people that are like soloing in jazz as well, like you can either play like fast jazz or you can play like slow, and it's not like one's better than the other. They're just two different styles, and like I think you just like have your style that works quite really well.
Yeah, I understand this whole like fast jazz and like the kind of like this new jazz kind of jamming, like almost like there was a lot of that at Berkeley.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I was in jazz ensembles where everyone's kind of like trying to out solo each other, and I was like on cello, like I don't know what's happening, but I'm learning a lot, so it's fine. Yeah, my kind of jazz is definitely a little bit, although I love listening to that, I'm definitely a slow jazz person.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think, in the end they're all, fast jazz, slow jazz, all this jazz, instrumental, vocal jazz. It's in the end, it's all built on the same
Exactly, yeah.
standards, the
Yeah.
same rib cage, if you will. And
All the
I
same
just
cadences, yeah.
highlight that is that can be interpreted in so many different ways. So in the end, it's just like good bones.
I mean, can we expect any like improvised solos when you're playing live?
Sorry?
Can we expect any improvised solos when you're playing live?
Oh, definitely.
Awesome.
I mean, I love scatting, and I love, I don't think I'm like a very good jazz like music like instrumentalist. Like when I play piano, like I'm just very classically trained, and then I kind of started like teaching myself chords, and same with guitar. I just like know a couple of the same chords, but although I really want to learn more, but I really like scatting and like doing like, as much as I possibly can. In the end, I just try not to take myself too seriously, which is hard after years and years of classical training, where you have to take yourself very seriously and follow a very certain set of rules. So yeah, I've kind of been unlearning that in the past 2-3 years, and just like remembering that, a wrong note is fine. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
If you decided to play it, it's right, and can you hear me still convincing myself? but yeah, and I think that was kind of, I was very reluctant to, solo first, because I was so scared of doing something wrong. But
Yeah.
now I kind of have fun with it, and no one's been too mean yet, so
Hopefully not. No. I think it's been really great getting to know you. I think we'll start wrapping things up, but yeah, I mean, you've got your music out on Spotify. You're very I don't know too many Laufey Lynn, so yeah, Laufey Lynn, of course, on socials, on Instagram and TikTok, I guess.
It's just Laufey now, actually.
Laufey.
Oh, is it just Laufey?
Just Laufey, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Laufey. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We got the username.
Nice,
yeah,
even
it's
easier.
perfect. I mean, yeah, everything will be in the description. Thank you guys for checking the episode out. Thank you so much for coming on, Laufey.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and a big shout out to Mushroom Studios for this really nice setup and it working first time.
Exactly. So subscribe, like, click all the buttons, follow all the socials, and yeah, we'll see you next time.